Well, the reason the gun came in the first place was because it was broke. 2 years ago, somebody went over it, put a new Vortex spring in it, Vortex piston seal, and lubed it up for him. But this time around, I think if I have the story right, Sid put a couple drops of oil in the barrel, and well, we know what that's going to do. So the recoil on that gun when it detonated was so strong that it actually broke the aluminum trigger that was in the gun, and there's a leftover piece. So the idea was to fix it and check the rest of the gun out to make sure that nothing else was broken. At any rate, I took the trigger all apart, looking to see if there was any shards that may have dropped down in here, and there were actually 2 shards from that aluminum trigger. And then meanwhile, I had realized that, taking it all apart, that he was missing this pin here, which holds in this guy up at the top, and we'll call that the upper sear tension block, because that's the little block that has the Allen in it that you adjust, and there's a spring between that block and the upper sear here, and that Allen adjusts the tension on the block with the spring to give you your trigger blade tension. So that was all missing. But anyway, I have some parts laying around I was able to use until the other ones finally come in to replace them. But also, when I got the gun, and I told Sid, don't ship the gun with the stock, you know, I had some stocks, and unfortunately that was the downfall when you ship these Hatsan, when they have so many parts in the trigger, so many pins and pieces, that you're able to lose something along the way. So once you take your Hatsan gun out of the stock, you have to be very careful. Now, I don't remember, but all I know is when we got to the bench, those pieces were not in there. I saw the big hole up there in that area. The other interesting thing was when I got it and I put it on the bench, I noticed right away that this gun was actually cocked. The piston was actually pulled back and held back. It was cocked. The sear was holding it back from firing, and the reason I could tell that is because I caught my eye that the little sear window there, I could see that the sears were engaged, and then I had checked out the piston. The piston indeed in this gun was all the way back. You didn't see the spring, and boy, it was just one big booby trap waiting to go off. And anyway, I disarmed it, carefully disarmed it, I should say, and then we got to it. And that's where we are right now. Here with the guide, like I talked about before, we're going to have to notch this guy right here where the trigger sear is, and the way this was made, I may not have to notch the O-ring. I think the last time I made one for my Turkish Tomahawk, I had this back further and I had to cut the O-ring. We'll see how it turns out. There's also some preload on this. Here's the original guide right there. So you can see there's a difference and there's a bit of preload. We may have to adjust that. A lot of times in these Hatsan guns, depends on the replacement spring, there's not a lot of room left for preload. Anyway, we'll get this together, we'll see what she does, and then we'll find out. Well, we're back up in the lathe room. It's Sunday. It is an absolutely gorgeous day. But anyway, we're going to make a top hat for Sid's spring. I'll get the camera set up and we'll take it from there on another clip. Okay, we're all set up. So we're going to make the top hat for the spring that fits inside this massive piston. So while we're here, let's talk about these guns. The guns are massively built for power. The pistons are big, the springs are big, everything's just big. So we've been having problems with the aftermarket piston seals failing, and they've been doing that for, I don't know, I'm going to say quite a while. So I've been just recommending everybody to use the Hatsan seals. Hatsan, I believe, has changed their seals. They're a little bit different, they're a little bit better, and once you get that factory oil out of there, they actually seem to work very well. Quite often, the guys that work on these guns who really are not familiar with them, and maybe they'll do somebody's gun and they'll try to size the seal to make it fit the aftermarket seal, and that's the first thing you can't do. There's no resizing of the seal for these guns. You need whatever they make for it, believe me. So what you need to do is, not just because of these holes, you need to take everything down, this whole back end, and ream the crap out of it. Now you don't get up into the cocking slot, you leave that alone, or else you're going to chance having your cocking arm wiggle and rattle because you took some metal off of it. But you need to ream the crap out of the back end of the gun once you get your piston seal, if it's an aftermarket piston seal. And I tell you, most likely, unless things have changed, you never know when that happens, they have not been fitting right, they've been undersized. Now, I don't know if what's taking place out there, I don't know if guys have tried to put the piston seal in and the piston and complain that they were too tight, these aftermarket seals, and then the aftermarket seal makers took them down a little bit. I'm not really sure, I don't know, and at this point I don't care anymore. I'm fed up and I'm tired of it all. But you can't take the seal down. You need every bit of seal contact that you can get for once that seal is down in the air chamber area. You can't treat these like a Beeman or a Wine Rock. I try to tell people, and believe me, I'm just sharing my information. I am no air gun guru. I don't ever say that I am. I just do my thing here. But these are not Beeman rifles. What you learn with the Beemans, stay with the Beemans. When you move into this gun, these Hatsans, these big overbuilt Magnums, it's another ball game altogether. You better change your uniform because it's not the same. It's a different game. At any rate, so with the Hatsan seals, I think they've been making them better. As long as you've changed that lube out, you should be fine. But what's been going on is the feet per second. You'd use one of these aftermarket seals and the feet per second would not be up to par. Then you stick a Hatsan seal in there and boom, your feet per second are where they should be. So that's kind of irritating. At any rate, I'm just telling you, you can't size the piston seal down. Now obviously, if it's so big that you can't even get it in the end, that's a different story, but I could tell you that's just not going to happen. So whatever's going on out there with the piston seal makers, I have no idea, but I have a little theory. It's just because guys thought that just because they couldn't get them in easy enough that they were complaining. Well, that was your first mistake. These are not Beeman guns and you can't treat them as such. But at any rate, so if you do a gun and you do use a piston seal for it, you're going to need to take that baby for a bunch of test rounds. I'd say at least 30 shots minimum, and if that seal's going to burn up, it's usually going to burn up within that period of time. But at any rate, that's what's going on in our airgun world. I've been getting seals from Australia, and I also been using the Hatsan seals. Now the Australian seals seem to be doing fine. I haven't done it enough to know, but so far so good. Anyway, let's get on with our top hat. So what do we have for the inside of our piston on this Hatsan Sniper? Looks like 84 inside diameter. That is a massive piston. So let's see what we have. Yep, let's see if you can see that. That's 84. Anyway, we're going to shoot for 84 on the overall dimension right here. The whole thing, we're going to take that down to 84. We're going to see what this measures and see how much we need to take off. So we're at 99 and we need to go down to 84. So let's just take off 11,000 right off the bat. Or 12, why not? And generally a top hat for the inside of the spring only needs to be 3/4 of an inch. So that's close enough right there. But at this point we were taking down the outside diameter for the inside of the piston, so we need to take this further. Because that's the dimension we're going for first. That should be good enough. And before we get all carried away, we'll double check this. And then we'll stick our piston in just to see if we get that dimension. So where are we now? Now we're at 87. I think you can see that. Well, let's go down another 3 thousandths. All right. You know, a lot of guys will say that these guns are a piece of crap. Well, you're looking at the whole thing wrong. If these guns don't appeal to you, then obviously you don't care about the big magnum power. Now that's what appeals to the guys who want these guns. These guns are a pain in the butt, because first of all, you're lucky if you get one with a good barrel. That's the whole starting point. And second of all, they're very hard to work on. They're really a pain in the butt. And then the guys that do work on them, I know darn right well, they'll tend to do minimum on the gun and they'll call it good. And that's what you're stuck with. Unless you take the gun to Mr. Mike here, and he's going to go over that gun with a fine-tooth comb, and believe me, you're going to get much more out of the gun than you can get anywhere else. So let's see what we have here. Well, we're down, see that's in the picture there, we're down to our 84. So let's just double check, because you can measure one thing and you have to make sure, you can't take it for granted, you have to make sure that you are getting and you have what you thought you wanted. So we're going to just loosen this up a little bit and stick it in our piston, and it'll be able to go in up to this point. Yeah, that's fine. I like that. Good. We'll just chuck it back up. So now we're going to cut this down to our inside dimension for the spring, which was 54. So we're going from 84 to 54. Let me just, yeah, we're going to go from 84, I think that's in, to 54. So that's 30 thousandths. So we're going to go take 25 off, but let's start with 15. $25 thousandths. We're going to start with 15. Something like that. Remember, we only want about 3/4 of an inch here. Otherwise, you're just wasting material, because it's going to have to get cut off. We wanted 54. Ooh, down to 70. Let's take another. Let's take another 10 off. I've worked all weekend and I'm just tired. Well, not all weekend, but I've been on call and I've got enough calls. Nobody likes to be on call. But you might make the company just enough money over the weekend to pay for your entire week's worth of work. Isn't that fantastic? You gotta love it. And I always say it's nobody's fault but your own. Should have went in your own business. But you didn't. So suck it up. Okay, enough humor. So we're down to 62. We need to go to 54. Let's go, as they say in the old movie, dive, dive, dive. Take it down. So let's take off 7. I think that would work. Oh, let's play it safe. I like playing it safe. Take off 6. Yeah, if I go back in time, I certainly would have been in my own business. I get irritated with the stuff I have to deal with all the time. And I love this business. I'm a plumber, and I love customers. But the stuff that you have to deal with in between all that is not very nice. Let's see what we have. Ooh, 55, 56. Let's see. We're going to call that 56 or 55. We have another 1,000 to go. So it's always nice to play it safe. All right, let's go just shy of that 1,000 mark. Go for it, son. Make it 1,000. Well, here's a mock-up of some of the work that we did due to the fact that I lost some of the footage. So here we were working on the top hat. There it is. It's the finished form. And the spring guide for this is in the spring, the new Vortex spring. Now the spring above it is the other spring that was in the gun that was a Vortex spring. And you can see, because that gun was cocked in the cocked position for over 60 days or over 30 days. It's canted in different places. I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick up with that, but it's also 2 coils short. Now sometimes a guy will work on a rifle and he won't even tell the guy that owns it. He'll just cut 2 coils off it. That'll detune it and make it calmer to a degree that wasn't there before, and then you know, lube it up and put the new piston seal in and call it good. But if the customer doesn't want that, then that's not what he's getting here. So this guy here is the full-size Vortex spring, and that's going to get my custom parts. Now normally people are not going to sit there and make custom parts for you. They're just going to shove the original guide back in, lube it up, put the new piston seal in, maybe cut 2 coils off, maybe not, and call it a day. But with me, that's just not going to happen. You're going to get custom fitted guides. And this one we went a little further. Now this is the first time I've done this. I came up with an idea for those of you wondering what the O-ring was all about. Well, the O-ring is designed to fit on this piece here. Then the O-ring is going to fit in just inside the receiver and hug those receiver walls very good, nice and firm. So the O-ring is not going to go anywhere because it can't. It's locked in there. But now remember, this is a mock-up. That's going to ride on the spring guide back here, as well as the end of the spring guide there. And when it goes and sits back and it hits its stop, it's going to have just a little bit back from the face of that, which is kind of like that, but that's a little extreme because this is a mock-up. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't want that to ride and rub on the face of this. We just want the tit to grab it. We want this part to be clear of this. We want this part to be clear of that, and everybody can work independently. So that's what I came up with, and the idea of that O-ring is to absorb and just to give the spring guide a little something extra that wasn't there before, besides the custom fitted, well-made spring guide. And the other thing is you have to flatten the top out just like that in order to have the sear slot like that, so that the sear drops down and nothing is going to interfere. So that's why you have the top of that has been cut back. But anyway, this is a mock-up. We got this done. I did lose some footage, so there it is. As far as the spring guide, they're all a little different. This one here that I made is about probably an inch to an inch and a quarter longer than the original. It fits much better like a spring guide should, so there's a big difference going on there. But anyway, that's that. We're going to call it a wrap and see if we can finish this video and get it up and running. Well, don't mind the shop. I work 5 days a week and the shop is a mess. When I no longer work 5 days a week, then I'll be able to have more time to do what I need to do and have things the way I like it. But anyway, we're back in the shop and now we're going to go for our crony numbers. We're going to see what our spring guide did and our special new adapter that we made. Now this is not Sid's stock. This is my thumb hole stock that I had. Sid actually had to ship his stock to me. So I told him I need his stock in order to send the receiver back because I'm not sending it back otherwise. That was a big mistake on my part telling him just to send the receiver. We wound up losing some trigger parts. But anyway, lesson learned. We're moving on. So I have here some 25 caliber pellets. These are these H&N Field Target Trophies and they are 20.06 grain. And supposedly they're average around 769 feet per second. And I'm in Montana here where we have I believe 3,200 feet of elevation above sea level. So let me get the crony set up. Now one of the things about crony in your Hatsan Magnums is, especially if you have the factory barrel, because often the barrels are oversized. Often the pellet to breech fit is funky, so that's going to determine what your feet per second are. So these pellets I have sitting here, I've got 2, 4, 6 of them. I flared the skirts to get them ready for the crony tests, because if you don't, most likely you're not going to reach your crony numbers. So that's what plays an important part into the factors. Also, if you overseat them and they actually go down into the bore a little bit, that will drastically drop your feet per second anywhere between 30 and 50 feet. I mean, it's just insane. So the pellet to breech fit is critical. You may think your gun's under par, but unless you flare your pellets and get a really good fit to find out exactly what your gun's giving you. At any rate, I want you to pay attention to the shot cycle. Watch the gun when I shoot the gun. Now there's been a lot of work done to that trigger. He broke the trigger, but in order for get the trigger blade back, I had to do some extra work to the gun, and the screws are where they need to be, but I have to actually go back, and whenever I do somebody's trigger, I always make it so you cannot adjust it anymore. It's totally set to where it is, and that's it. You can underdo it, but you can't go back and adjust the screws more than where I had adjusted them to. So pay attention to the gun overall when I shoot it, with the calmness that it has compared to what you normally get. I think it's pretty good, actually. Anyways, I did wind up taking some of that top hat down. I didn't want to put it in the gun and find out that little bit more wasn't going to give me the ability to cock the gun. I've had this gun apart, and that's one of the things that happens is when you work these, now see that one went in a little too far. I have a little tool here. So let's just see what our numbers are. But at any rate, get this chair adjusted. Safety's off. A little bit of trigger travel. You hit your second stage, slight squeeze, and the gun goes off. Yeah, she was way under par because of it. So if you over push your pellet in, you're going to lose your feet per second easily, no problem. So we're hoping to see, we're going to be around 760, 769, hopefully, in that area for the numbers. Yep, 761. And again, I can't stress enough, it really depends on how that actual pellet's seated. Well, the gun feels good to me. I like it. I'm happy to send it out that way. I'm very pleased with it. Safety off. Eight, 10 on that one. Now see, that was an exceptionally good pellet fit. So let's shoot the rest of them. Now the Hatsan, the big beast, the overbuilt, I say design, but it's not over designed, it's just overbuilt. You still hear the ping from the piston slam. There's nothing you can do about that unless you take this rifle and detune it. Let's use common sense here. You're talking about a rifle that is built for power. It's a beast. We've substantially made it a lot nicer, believe me. And unless you detune the gun and take away from its actual way they made it for the brute power, that's the only way you're going to make it a hell of a lot smoother. When it comes down to it, it is what it is. Now that one was $8.19. You know, you buy a gun like this, then you can expect to get what comes with it. Now, as far as getting one with a bad barrel, that's unfortunately the drawback. It's going to be a 50-50 chance whether you get a good barrel, ho-hum barrel, or a oversized, bad, choppy barrel. It's just the way it goes. Now, this Sid happened to get a good gun. His gun was accurate. Safety off. 758. So everything's going to vary. We have what? 2 pellets. So you may have your guns could be up to snuff and you just didn't put the pellet in right, because you have to be aware of what your pellet to bore fit is. You're going to need some type of pellet seating tool, and you're going to need to flare your pellet skirts out, most likely. .6. I'm happy with that. We're going to call it a wrap. I hope the video turns out. I actually lost the original clips to this video. This is Mike saying thanks for hanging out. Be safe and take care.